So I'm Carolyne. Oh, thank you. Now I've got it. Now Zoom is telling me it's being recorded. Let me start this all over again. So here I am. I'm Carolyne. I live here in Chicago. I've just come back from the Pilates Method Alliance conference in Las Vegas, where I presented a paper at the research forum on the rehabilitation of diastasis recti. We only had 10 minutes to present, and I know as I was walking out of the room, there were so many people asking questions, which I couldn't answer. Number one, because I was starving, and I had to drag Bridget to go and get a ham and cheese croissant because I hadn't eaten all day. But that made me think that maybe I would put this together and do the same presentation and have you guys ask questions. I am going to go off on a tangent. I'm not going to stick to the whole abstract that I did at the forum because I only had the 10 minutes where I had to get through everything. I'm going to follow my slides, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we came about with the research and things that you can do to rehabilitate. I'm going to ask you all to mute when you come on. Just go ahead and mute as you come on because it's very loud over here. So let me see with all this wonderful technology if I can actually share my screen. And here we go. That was easy. And we will go right back to the beginning. So what I was saying just now is if you have questions, go ahead. No, I spoke too soon. If you have questions, go ahead and type them into the chat. We will then look at the questions and try and answer them in the order that they've been received. If I can't answer all of them today, I'm going to take all the questions and put them in a Word document and write the answers and send it to you. As you come on, please mute yourselves. It's very distracting to have everybody have noises. Okay, so here we go. So here is the actual paper. I collaborated with my colleague Sneha Krishna. She lives in India. She's a Pilates instructor. She also has her master's in biochemistry. And she's been doing a lot of research in fascia. And so we have collaborated and she's put together the science behind the program that I developed, the Center Method for Diastasis Recti Recovery. And now after years and years of really trying to put together something by observing and watching people and getting results and really being instinctive with everything I was doing, I finally now with all of the new research in fascia have been able to now understand why my program was actually working. So I'm really excited. This is the beginning of it all for us. Sneha and I are writing a book together for Handspring Publications. And if we get our act together, we might have it ready by next year. But it's quite an exciting time for both of us. So what we chose to present was, and this is going to be the only time I'm going to do some scientific language here. I do want all of you who are on here, who are not movement people, to understand that I'm going to be speaking in movement language. I'm not going to be speaking in physical therapy or doctors or scientific language. My audience is fitness people, Pilates instructors, and so I'm going to be speaking that language. So after I've told you the title of this abstract, that will be the only time that it's going to sound intimidating. So what we're going to be looking at is the convergence of extraceptive techniques and intraceptive sapience in the rehabilitation of diastasis recti. And what that actually means is we're looking at the confluence or the coming together of using external techniques, and that can be anything. That can be using your breath patterns, or what we're going to be looking at particularly in this program is the use of our myofascial release balls to get people to become more aware of their own bodies. It's what we're trying to do is to get your clients to take the responsibility of their bodies and of their rehabilitation on themselves. But if they don't have an understanding of or an awareness of what's happening inside, we have found that no matter what you do for them on the outside, whatever exercises you're giving them, whatever releases you're giving them, whatever you're giving them, it's just not going to work if they don't have it in their bodies. So basically, that's what we're looking at here. There's so many other things that we could be talking about, but we'll just narrow it down to this for today. So the next slide is going to be the introduction. So a lot of us concentrate on the postnatal client, but really, if we want to be rehabilitating diastasis recti as a condition in and of itself, we've got to be looking at all populations because it's an actual injury to the body. It's not a condition or a consequence of pregnancy. Something else happens during the pregnancy that creates the environment for the diastasis to happen. And if we just continue to look at the female pregnant client, then we're really not going to get anywhere with this. So if we take it away from your pregnant and postpartum client, put it through all populations, then we'll be able to have a better understanding of what the condition actually is. And what it is a failure to restore deformation in the transverse compliance of the rectus sheath and linea alba. So that results in diastasis recti. Now, a lot of times I've heard, not a lot of times, it seems to me that everybody talks about the stretching of the linea alba is what causes a diastasis recti. And it's the intra-abdominal pressure created by a woman being pregnant with the growing fetus and the growing uterus, and that's pushing against the linea alba to a point where the linea alba gives, and then you have a diastasis recti. But in all the research that we've been doing, we have actually found that it's not so much about the linea alba, but it's about, and here's a scientific word again, the transverse compliance of the rectus sheath coming into the linea alba. So basically, the linea alba manages to keep its integrity. And let me just go on with this. So basically, it's all the fibers of the fascia coming in towards the linea alba in that transverse position. Make it part of it is part of the rectus sheath coming into the linea alba in the front. And then it comes round to the back and it joins into the thoracolumbar fascia in the back. And it's that fascia, it's that sheet that goes around your body that becomes unstable, not so much your linea alba. So straight away, what we need to be doing here is actually working your body in flexion of the torso, because that's going to help keep the integrity of that linea alba. When we take flexion away, we're not giving that linea alba and all of the muscles attached to the linea alba enough functionality. Let me just, please mute yourselves as you come in. Let me just go through all of these different diastasis recti. I've got just a few pictures here. Of course, I have thousands. As some of you who are on here, I know you've been through my program, and you know that everybody who comes through this program has to take photos of their stomach, and we see, even if you don't have a diastasis, we see changes in the abdominal area just by doing the releases and the exercises. So what we have over here is a diastasis from the belly button coming all the way up to the xiphoid process. Now, there's no change, there's no excessive sagging of the skin here, there are no fascial pulls, nothing. It was a very firm, very tight diastasis. I do have a story, as you well know, those teachers of mine know that I always have a story. This lovely lady was in one of my courses in London, and I believe she was a few years out of being pregnant, but was having a hard time resolving this gap, and had been to PT, had done everything possible. One of the things I'm going to mention here, because we're not in the scientific background here, so I can talk about emotions and all the other wonderful things. And if you do my course, I do have all of these photos up and show you the resolution of the diastasis. But her diastasis was actually, I'm just going to put myself out there and say, I believe her diastasis wasn't resolving because she hadn't resolved the trauma of her birth. But during the class itself, she had a really huge, great big cry when I was working on her, and her gap closed. Right there and then it closed. It was the most amazing thing to see. So what I also want you to understand when you're going through, if you go through my course, or when we're talking tonight, that trying to rehabilitate a diastasis recti isn't just a physical thing at all. It really encompasses so much more. It encompasses your emotional state, your mental state, how stressed you are, how fatigued you are, whether you have good nutrition. All of this can help create an environment for a diastasis recti to happen. And for me, the diastasis is the end result of all of that that's gone on before. And so you get to that tipping point. It could be that you're doing flexion of the torso, and it's just when all of those things come together and boom, your fascia gives. But it's not the exercise, that's the villain here. I'll come down to the next photo here. Let me just check that I'm still being heard. So this woman is 11 weeks pregnant, and her diastasis, once again, was from the belly button to the xiphoid process. And these are unusual diastases, because if a diastasis does happen, it tends to happen around the umbilicus itself, and then it will split a little bit to the top and a little bit to the bottom. So when you see diastases that go from the belly button upwards, something else is causing that. It's an abnormality of the abnormality, as it were. And this particular client of mine had actually come to me from CrossFit, and she was doing flexion of the torso, hanging off a bench and flinging herself upwards to gain whatever strength she needed. So here we are with her diastasis. She was able to resolve the diastasis as she was doing flexion of the torso during her pregnancy. So it's not a done deal. It's not, this is the end of moving the body and you just have to sit still. This woman was postpartum, 19 months postpartum. She also has a hernia. In this particular client, she has the telltale fascial pulls across her abdominis here. So you can see the sagginess of that transverse compliance. What this also tells me here, if you look underneath the rib cage, when there is that deep indentation of the rib cage, then you can also assume that her internal oblique is tight. And what we want to do here is start to release that sort of tightness in any one muscle group. We have here a non-pregnant female with a bulge. And then we have a male client. In fact, this male client was my very first diastasis client way back in 1996. So when people tell me it's a postnatal or pregnancy condition, I'm just like, well, that wasn't my experience. And here we have Gary, who came to me because he couldn't understand, and I won't tell you the word he used, on his stomach. So we tried to figure that out. I'm just going to see if anybody has a question so far. Yeah, I'm trying to get, everyone should be muted by now. Okay, I'm going to move on. There are no questions right now. What are some of the associations with diastasis recti? There are many. And again, just for this paper, we chose 3 of them. The first one is really, really important. You will have a reduction in sensory and kinesthetic predictions across the abdominal wall. Now, what does that mean? That is your client who can't feel anything. And that's a reality. Okay, so if we all have that client. Oh no, I can't feel that. And you're like, oh my God, you've been coming to me for 3 years and you still can't feel that. It's a real problem, especially if you've got something like diastasis recti. It is an injury. And if you don't rehabilitate your injury, it's not going to work. You wouldn't not deal with someone who sprained their ankle or had knee surgery. You would rehabilitate them. They won't be able to feel stuff for a while because all the nerves have been damaged. Please mute yourself if you've just come in. Can you mute yourself if you've just come in? Hang on, I'm just going to see if I can mute those who've just come in. I know it's very distracting. All right, everyone's muted. So we have what we're going to try and do with this reduction in sensory and kinesthetic predictions. So kinesthetic predictions are that pre-movement movement. So it's, if we're going to do flexion of the torso, then your body knows that if you're thinking it, then your body knows it's going to go and do flexion of the torso, and it's going to prepare all those different muscles, the rectus abdominis, your internal, external obliques, your transverse abdominis, to actually do that movement. But when you have something like diastasis recti, they're not working in sync at all. So there's none of that, okay, this, you know, all of that preparation isn't there. So when you're beginning to rehabilitate this condition, you have to take it way, way back to real basic stuff in the beginning. And we have found that using external or extraceptive techniques really helps with getting people back into that state of feeling stuff. It's them becoming interoceptive sapiens again. They're getting that body wisdom again. And all they really needed was just a pathway back to that. It's really as simple as if you've got a client in your studio and she knows that she has a right shoulder, but if you put your hand on her shoulder, then she really knows that she has a right shoulder. And if you continue to leave your hand on her shoulder, then her body's going to respond to that pressure by becoming really aware of that right shoulder. So it's as simple as that. It's bringing that extra external awareness or tactile feedback, if it were, so that people can then once again begin to sense their own body. And we're going to try and do this without doing too much cueing, without telling people what they're supposed to be feeling, just leaving them to it. They will get there. You've got to let everybody have their own process here. Suboptimal breathing technique is a big thing with diastasis recti. Once you have lost the support through your core, you're going to start to have difficulty in keeping an optimal breathing technique going. And this, I know when we were at the conference, Carla Mullins from Australia asked me a question about diaphragmatic breathing, which is a really good question to ask, because I know not a lot of programs with diastasis recti will teach you that diaphragmatic breathing, because that's going to connect you to your transverse abdominis. Please.
Sorry. I think my nails are so thick and broken in bed.
Could you mute yourself, please? I'm sorry, guys. I'm just going to try and mute this person. Can everybody mute themselves, please? Okay, I'm sorry. So talking about the breath pattern again, and Carla Mullins had asked about diaphragmatic breathing. Now, diaphragmatic breathing is used in a lot of different techniques to bring focus when you're trying to meditate or trying to connect through your transversus abdominis. But understand that when somebody has a diastasis recti, the transversus abdominis is not working optimally. So what's going to happen with somebody doing a diaphragmatic breath is they're going to inhale and they're going to exacerbate the gap or the doming or the sogginess, I can't think of the word, or the laxity of that fascia, and increase that pressure because they're inhaling into the diaphragm and allowing the transversus to expand. But what somebody doesn't have when they have a DR is the ability to then bring it back. Okay, that ability has been lost because of the injury. So what we tend to do in my program is to take the breath into the whole of the rib cage itself. So you're taking away the pressure from that diaphragmatic breath, you're bringing up into the rib cage, and then you're enabling the body to be able to connect through the transversus in a better way. And that's our breathing sequence in the program, and I'll probably do it with you in a minute. The third part of this is that we find that people with DR have a compensatory hypertonic activity of peripheral myofascial continuities as an altered route to manage the intra-abdominal pressure. So what this actually means is that because there's no support through your center, something else in your body has to take over. And what we tend to see commonalities through people with DR is the gripping of the butt and the tucking of the pelvis to hold the lower abdominals, or the tensing of the shoulders, lifting the shoulders up. And that also, with the tension through the neck and shoulders, that's also going to create more problems with the breathing.
It shuts down the running game and stealing this person's
Could you all mute?
as well as you can. And
Could you please all mute yourselves?
For the field. Slided with a double, won it with a homer in the 10th.
Can you all stay muted, please? Thank you. So you'll see a commonality with posture there with people with DR. Any questions? All right, let's move on. No questions yet? Hopefully you're all enjoying this, even with all the noise. So we're moving on to the problem statement, and this is a biggie. So despite all the advancement in our knowledge of the complex architecture of the abdominal wall, its myofascial connections and newer therapeutic techniques, we have found that the success of any treatment protocol appears to rely majorly on the client's interoceptive sapience. So, you know, we can throw all these exercises and all these techniques at people, but some people will improve and some people don't. Some people get it, some people don't. And it really is down to whether they have that knowledge of themselves, that awareness of themselves, to be able to integrate those exercises or whatever technique you're using and make it work, basically. So we've narrowed it down to this. So what the objective of this whole course was, and I'm sorry, I'm not very good at centering things. We wanted to assess the use of exteroceptive techniques and interoceptive sapience as a primer to manual and movement therapies for the rehabilitation of diastasis recti. So through all the years, and I've been doing this for about 25 years. For those of you who came to some of my really early courses, you know how simple it was. And my whole teaching philosophy is the simpler you can make it, the more your client's actually going to be able to do it. I think one of the things that I'm really proud of with the method that I've developed is the fact that I have not changed those exercises, which makes me really happy because there's still going to be those simple exercises that people can actually do. But now what's happening is we understand why those were working in the first place. But even more so than finding out which exercises actually help with diastasis recti, we found that if we put into place what I'm going to call, if you're a Pilates person, I'm going to say these are going to be pre-Pilates techniques. I'm not even going to call them exercise because it's a combination of exercise and fascial release and relaxation techniques. We're trying to give you a few things that can be a primer that you can use no matter what modality that you teach. So we're trying to make sure you understand that it's these things that are put in place, and then you can go ahead and do whatever you want, and you're going to be able to rehabilitate the diastasis recti. Why were we doing this? Why did we want to do this? Or what were these techniques going to achieve? Well, the exteroceptive techniques we were using, number one, primarily to stimulate the parasympathetic activity and allow the client to recognize their own interoceptive feedback. So we give them whatever activity we want, and then we step back and let them get on with it. We don't tell them what they're supposed to feel. We're not telling them what they're supposed to do. We're just going to get them to do something as simple as sitting on a ball. Everyone who's been through my courses know that we do a pelvic floor release by just simply sitting on a ball. What we've also come to realize is it might not necessarily be a release. but it might be just the body responding to a sensitization of that particular area. Okay, so you've got all of these nerve endings in the fascia, and they might be all clubbed together because you haven't been doing very much sitting on the ball. I mean, why would you? But then you've got that pressure, and the thing of it is that for those of you who've been through my courses and know from right in the beginning, I used to use harder balls, and I've come to a point now where we've got such light balls. It's just amazing to see how this can still have such a great effect by having even gentler props to work with. But what you're doing is, for instance, if we're doing the pelvic floor release, then it's just the act of them actually having something on their pelvic floor and just relaxing into it that allows the body to respond. And they're going to start to feel that response through their whole body. And that is the beginning of their interoceptive feedback. So they're doing it for themselves. They have to be able to recognize that. Now, one of the good things about these techniques is they happen really quickly. So people get excited because they can see results almost immediately. And when that happens, obviously, they're going to stick to your program. We do these external techniques to stimulate the mechanoreceptors of the region. It could be in the rehabilitation right now of diastasis recti. Even though it's a whole body problem, we do concentrate in the program basically on the pelvis, the pelvic floor, the abdominal area, the posterior anterior abdominal area, and the rib cage. So basically your whole core. So we use different positions with our balls to stimulate the mechanoreceptors of those regions. And that will assist in enhancing the kinesthesia and reduce the increased muscle tone. Okay, so it's not necessarily that we're releasing fascia, but you will find a lot of times with people with diastasis recti, like I showed you that picture of the woman with the really tight internal obliques, it does help soften that. Okay, it doesn't release, it just helps everything kind of get more into balance. Really important is to establish a 3D expansion of the rib cage to ensure optimal recruitment of the anterior lateral abdominal muscles. And I actually also want to say the posterior lateral abdominal muscles as well. And also to include a rhythmic role of the pelvic floor muscles. So you've got your respiratory diaphragm with your breath, you've got your pelvic floor diaphragm working together with this rhythm. But a lot of times people are breathing, doing that diaphragmatic breath, which it takes away a little bit from that rhythm of the two diaphragms. And so we take it up into the rib cage so that if that ensures, as it says, to ensure optimal recruitment of the abdominal muscles. So you'll find a lot of the times when we're cueing the program, we do take it into a 3D expansion here. I do have my website up, and I am going to show you a couple of videos from the program that you can actually see all of this happening. So the objective of all this particular research was to assess the use of exteroceptive techniques and interoceptive sapience as a primer. I've done that, right? I just did that. Oh, technology, I just love this. So here we go. Here's the methodology. So this actually comes from my program itself. So my tagline for the Center Method for Diastasis Recti Recovery is relax, release, realign, and restore, the 4 pillars of our success. Okay, so once you've done the first 2 at least, actually, I'm going to say do all 4 of them. So what we do in the beginning is we have people do some kind of guided body scanning, breath work or breath awareness in a supine position. And one of the reasons for doing that is that's a rest position, number 1. It's a very familiar position for people, but it also offloads both the abdominal muscles and the pelvic floor muscles. And so they're not trying to grip those areas because they don't have control. So they're going to be able to relax. What we do in the beginning is something called the relaxation alignment cueing. And what this is basically is, again, is to bring that interoceptive sapience to that person. So basically what we're going to do is get people to focus on their own breath. So what we're doing there is we're not trying to guide them in some kind of breath. We're not saying, I want you to take a diaphragmatic breath, inhale into your tummy and then exhale and pull all these things up and together and stuff. We're just going to get people to breathe naturally and normally. And when you're not talking at them and telling them how they should breathe, then they begin to relax into their body and just breathe. And they get to know their own breath pattern. And what you can do as a teacher, I was going to say as an examiner, as a teacher is just watch how they breathe. And just watching how they breathe can tell you so much about what you need to do next. Once they've started to breathe, you're going to see after a while, you're going to see that switch where they come out of their sympathetic nervous system into their parasympathetic nervous system. You can see it happening, right? And if you don't, then maybe time yourself, say, give them 5 minutes and then move along, and then slowly you'll build up your eye as to when that happens. But a lot of times you're aware of it. Once they have reached that parasympathetic, when they have activated the parasympathetic nervous system, then their body's far more receptive to doing whatever you ask. So what I do then in this whole relax part of the program is bring their awareness to their physical body. So I do a body scan. I make them feel where the center of the back of their head is, and I work down their body using language that isn't things like pull your ribcage to the mat, but rather allow your ribcage to sink into the mat, or feel the heaviness of your shoulder blades, or feel the heaviness of the back of your pelvis. So your language also has to reflect keeping them in that safe, nurturing environment as well. And your tone of voice as well has to come into play, the pace of how you're teaching them. That's not to say that, half an hour into the class, you can't speed things up. You can, but you want to bring them into this more receptive way of understanding the information that's going to come. All right. Otherwise, I always think of it as those rubber arrows that you see in cartoons where they're bouncing off people's bodies and shooting them. And that's how I feel the information is when you're still in this fight or flight or freeze response, you're not going to get anywhere. So once you have got them to do all of that, then we start with using the balls. And the balls are there, basically the releases for sensitization of the areas of the perineum, ribcage, and abdominal wall. It's not a one size fits all here. We always start with the pelvic floor release because you've got to start somewhere. And it just so happens that we see the most results and people get excited because they see something happening with their abdominal area and they're keen to go on. But you have to start somewhere. So I always say you do pelvic floor release, go into the side, release into the side, and then see where the body takes you after that. Okay, because everybody's diastasis is as different as everybody. So one size doesn't fit all. But we're becoming more and more aware of the fact that it might not be us releasing fascia, but rather the body responding or becoming more aware of where it is in space by having this tactile feedback. Once that has happened, then we're going to realign the body. And that can be doing something as simple as a bridge. We do in this program, we realign the body as well using our breathing sequence. And I do want to show you a video doing that in a minute. And then once you've done that, we've got a few exercises. We have some fundamental exercises that, like I said in the beginning, it's a primer for whatever you're going to do after this. And then the restoration of the body can be anything that you do, whether you come from a fitness background, or a Pilates background, or a physical therapy background. Then once you've got things connecting and people understanding where they are in space and their awareness is building up, then you can start loading. You've got to get back to being functional again. So you've got to start doing abdominal loading, increasing endurance, all of those good things. There is no one exercise that is unsafe. It's just the way you do it that becomes unsafe. Okay, so if you're flinging yourself off a CrossFit bench, nothing's going to work. And I hate to keep saying that about CrossFit because I keep trying to find good things in it, but I can't, and I'm very sorry about that. So all of you CrossFit people. So let me go into where did my website go? Hang on, how do I do this? Oh, here we go. Hang on. All right, I need help here, Robin. Sorry. Are you still with me, everyone? Because I clicked on the wrong things.
How can I help, Caroline?
I seem to have lost myself. I seem to have lost the screen. Let me see what I can. Why have I lost the screen?
I see your screen.
I don't see. I'm trying to screen share. Can I stop the share and start again? Maybe. Oh, I'll do that. That's better. Let me start that again. I thought my website was up. I had it all planned, but I can't see it yet. That's really weird. All right, well, I won't waste time. Let me go on to here. Do we not have any questions? Let me just check into the chat. I can explain the breathing. I wanted to do the breathing. There's a question here. Can you explain the breathing again, please? I will in a minute. I wanted to actually show this video. My kids are 17 and 13. Is it too late to fix diastasis recti? It's never too late to fix your body. Your body's always trying to be healthy. So no, it's not too late to fix it. It's just like having an injury. Okay. I'm really not sure why I can't get into, just let me try one more time because I really want to, show you Robin, how do I do this? Do I come?
So
Are you there,
close.
Robin?
Yeah, I'm here. I just unmuted myself.
Okay.
So close out of your presentation, and then your desktop should pop up, and then you can open your browser.
Okay. How do I get
Just
out of this?
minimize that. Don't close out of it altogether.
Okay, I'm well, maybe because I'm so not good at this that maybe I'll finish the presentation and then go into my website. How about that? That work? Okay, let me just finish this up because I don't want to mess it all up. I have messed it up. All right, here we go. So these are the case studies. When we did the actual presentation, we had 5 women between the ages of 28 and 40. We checked them for DR. They were between 2.5 and 4 fingers gap. They were asked to practice and track the 4 steps that we just talked about, the methodology, the relax, release, realign, and restore every day for 3 months. That's a lot to ask someone, but they were really keen to get better, and they did it. They also received 3 private sessions a week with the practitioner. We had, so just before I go into the next slide, I just want to show you these photos. This is of a postpartum woman 2 weeks after her birth. And again, most of my photos are going to come from the teachers in my teacher training courses. I do have client case studies in the course, my online course I have. I'm working with a client with diastasis, and that's what I wanted to show you. If I can get there, I'll show you. But a lot of the photos I have are actually teachers, but this happened in the space of a couple of hours. So she comes in with this big gap. She also has a hernia. She does the pelvic floor release. She does a few exercises, and then she left by having some kind of restoration in her abdominal area. She did manage to keep it going for a few months. And then I think she went skiing and opened the gap up completely again. So this was in Norway. So things happen. Our findings here, when we did just the 5 women for just this abstract, 100% showed a gap reduction to less than 2 fingers in the first week. Now, is it always about the gap? No, it's not about the gap. It's really about what is the tension in that gap. So when you do a test for diastasis recti, the normal way of testing for someone who's not doming, so you can have someone come up into flexion of the torso and you'll see them dome. If they have a gap and you're checking the gap, then when they come up to flexion of the torso, you want to see how deep that gap is. Okay, so the deeper it goes, the more lax the fascia is. But we have found with all of this tactile feedback and the breathing, we are able to then return some of the tensegrity of the fascial system. And that also tends to, when you start to bring back that tensegrity, you're going to see the gap reduce anyway, just because all of the transverse compliance coming into the linea alba is going to start strengthening again. So that's just going to bring those muscles together because they're all encased in that one fascial sheet. So 60% sustained the gap closure and demonstrated an improvement in their abdominal loading. That's really important. So they were able to progress even after 2 months. And then out of those 60%, women who tracked being 80%, so the 80% came out of the 60%. Women who tracked being over 80% compliant to the protocol and homework, of course, showed remarkable improvement. But they worked really hard at their interoceptive sapience. They really were so keen to know how their bodies were, what it felt like to them. They started to really feel minute movements or micro movements that they'd never felt before. And it was just so lovely to see all of this happening. Now, I think we came down to 5 people, but I think there was a 6th person who, I'm sorry, but you have those clients too, really didn't get it. And then there's something else that's going on that is beyond our scope of practice. Okay, so don't worry about the people you can't reach, but just help the people you can. So our conclusions here, that it was the client's awareness, number 1, their willingness to change was huge, and they're consistent protocol, and that just goes without saying. If people come in and they don't really want to be there, nothing's going to happen. So initially this was going to be about postnatal women, but we changed it, and the study shows promise through all populations. So yes, all of these protocols work for men. And yes, men can also get in touch with themselves. And when they do, it's a beautiful thing to experience. Because number 1, I think a lot of people think men don't have pelvic floors, and they absolutely do. So when you get this replay, go through all of these references, look them up, because they are, we're also, I mean, there's loads of references, but these are particularly important to what we have discussed. So I have a program, obviously, called the Center Method for Diastasis Recti Recovery. It's a part of the Center for Women's Fitness. And I know we have a coupon for you for a discount if you feel like you would like to do that. I do want to show you these videos, so I'm really going to try hard to come out of here and show you a couple of videos about the showing. I'm sorry, I can't multitask. It's going to keep quiet and try and get out of here. So I'm going to actually come out of this. With that work, tell me it's going to work. Okay, so I'm going to try and go back into this I know I have my website set up already. It's just my computer, I think that's really slow. So just bear with me, guys. If anybody's got questions, no one's asking me any questions yet. Anyone got any questions? Hey, I have loads of questions. All right, I'm going to try. So here's my website. So let me see if I can get into this. Do I stop sharing? I'm going to try this. Okay, give me a minute. I'm just going to try again. I am not sure. I've got my website all set up. Hang on, let me just do something. Let me close this down. Now I can't come back into this. I'll try one more time, otherwise I'm just going to let you guys talk to me. Can you repeat how often the subjects of the study were practicing? Every day for 3 months. The very simple basic program was every day for 3 months. And it's really simple. Basically, it was the breathing sequence. We did things in 4 different environments. So we taught them how to do the breathing sequence. The breathing sequence is just doing that normal breath, and then we directed the breath first between the sit bones, which is the pelvic floor area. Then we did the breathing in between the hip bones to activate the lower part of the transversus abdominis. And then we came up into the circle at the bottom of the rib cage, which is the upper transversus. And we taught them how to do that individually, those 3 points, and then we put it all together. So that was the breathing sequence. And what was also important with the breathing sequence is that we inhaled, and we inhaled into these different parts of the body. But here's what was really, really important was on the exhale, everybody had to relax. So you inhale. On the exhale, you let everything relax so that all those muscles come back to resting. And it's at the end of the exhale that you connect sit bones, bottom of the rib cage, because then you have all of those muscles at resting position, then you connect rather than inhaling and then connecting, because what we were finding that so many people then braced. And of course, bracing through the abdominals when you have a DR is going to exacerbate the problem. So the relaxation, and I talk about relaxation so much during all my courses. I will talk about your courses. So let me just get through some of this. There's one more message. Thanks. Robin's put up my website. I really, really wanted to show you at least this one video if I can. I don't know why my website's not coming up on here. I'm so disappointed. I don't know what all of this is. I had it all prepared. Does anybody know? I'm just going to exit again. So my website is up. Oh, maybe that's what I have to do. So maybe let me come back into this. I don't want to waste anybody's time. Let me try one more time, and then I'm just going to answer questions. No, it's not coming up. I don't understand. Yeah, I'm not sure. How do you do that, Bridget? Can you unmute yourself and tell me?
So if you go into the green button on the bottom, the screen share once more, you might be able to find like an image of your desktop with the website up already, if that's opened.
It's open, ready to go, but I can't find it anywhere.
So if you did, yes, if something just flashed for a second. So if you go
here, can you see this? Oh,
yay.
Thank you so much. You're always saving me. Thanks, Bridget. All right, I got it. I'm going to show you. I want to show you the breathing sequence. There's no sound, so when I talk, let me talk about this course. So the Center Method for Diastasis Recti Recovery is a specialist certification, and this is just one of the modules, the Center Method for Diastasis Recti. If you do the whole certification, you have to do rocking and rolling to release. So let me go into that and show you what that is about. It's all the myofascial release work that we do. So let me just go and show you a couple of videos on that. Because you can't, in just the diastasis recti itself, I only show you pelvic floor release or the side release or a thoracic release. But you don't know what your client needs until you're working with that client. So if you can, I would suggest doing the whole certification, which will, I can't speak and do stuff. So this is the rocking and rolling to release. And let me just show you, just give you an overview of that. So somebody please turn their mute them. Please.
See you tomorrow.
We'll see you tomorrow. Okay, let me just see what's in. So I'm just going to show you some of the pelvic floor hamstring and glute release because that's important for pelvic floor work. It's 24 minutes. I'm just going to go through it. So this is the first part of the specialist certification. You do the rocking and rolling to release. So this is the pelvic floor release. So what you do, I'm going to turn the sound off. So what we do is we start, so it's, all my work is in sequences. So what I do is I start with sitting on the ball. So what you're doing is you're using the exteroceptive technique to bring awareness to the perineum. So that's a pelvic floor release, but nothing works in isolation. So I always do sequences. So this goes from the pelvic floor release into your hamstring release. So let me just move this along. So this all comes in your video, in your, there's my trusted pelvis. So you do the pelvic floor release, you do the hamstring release, and then you do a glute release. So this is the glute release. So everything in the releases work functionally. So in this particular movement, we're working on the hip rotators as well, but we're moving. So we're not just sitting on a ball or rolling the ball along the muscle. We're just keeping the ball where it is and moving the body over the ball. So here's your glute release. We're going to open the knee and bring it back. So we're actually using the muscle that we want to release, but because we've got that pressure on it, the exteroceptive pressure, then it brings you more awareness to your body, if that makes sense. So the rock and roll into release has all these releases that you can use, and I've added stuff for Pilates instructors. There are some releases on the equipment as well. Then what you would do, so this is really, really important, is the pelvic floor course, which then breaks down the exercises which form the basis of not just the diastasis recti course, but all of the courses. So I'll just show you one of the exercises there. So rocking and rolling to release, then you have support your floor. So pelvic floor work is really important for diastasis recti because your pelvic floor is connected to your abdominal muscles via fascia. Okay, there's a lot of fascial connections through your pelvic floor into the abdominal area. So I'll just show you this one really quickly because this one works with the pelvic floor and everything else in your hip girdle. This. So I'll just go quickly through this. So these are called hip glides. And basically you're just pulling the ball in towards you. But you have to exert a little bit of pressure on that white ball to keep it stable. So you're actually intensifying the exercise, and it will really get into. So you're using the breath, you're using the movement, to work into your pelvic floor, okay? And then, so that's a whole module on itself. And then after you've done the support your floor module, then you can go into the actual diastasis module. And since I've got the website up, I'm going to show you that breathing sequence where you can actually see the fascia tensioning. It's my pride and joy. So let me go into this. So I'm doing all these courses right now, which is why they're okay, so let me show you. So I have some case studies where I have taken videos. So let me show you supine breathing technique and see the tensioning of the fascia. And then I'm going to switch it over into the quadruped breathing. So I have, all right, so this woman has a big diastasis, and you don't see it so much when she's in the supine position, but you'll see it when she's in quadruped. So this is the breathing sequence. There's no sound. This is the sit bones, bottom of the rib cage, and you can see the tensioning of her abdominals. So here we go. So she's going to inhale. On the exhale, she's going to allow everything to relax, and then she's going to bring sit bones, hip bones, bottom of the rib cage together. And again, she's going to inhale. On the exhale, she's going to allow everything to relax, and then bring sit bones, hip bones, bottom of the rib cage together. So this is her hernia, and the hernia, once she keeps doing this breathing sequence, you will see that the hernia starts to lift, which means that she is now getting some tensioning into the fascia between her linea alba there. So you'll see that lift. So that's the tensioning of the fascia. All right, so something as simple as breathing can actually activate the fascia. So now I'm going to show you the same person in a quadruped position. And this is quite something to see. Okay, so same person in a quadruped. And you'll really see her diastasis here. I won't show you the whole thing, but just her breathing. So why is it important to change positions? Because now we've got her up off this from the supine position into quadruped. So now she's got a whole load of gravity pulling on her abdominal stomachs, all her stomachs, because that's loading. Okay, so this is a progression. I wouldn't do it in the same week or month. I would do it later on. But here's her in a quadruped position, and you can see the true. I'm going to turn the sound off because I also have a coughing fit in this one. There we go. So, oh, this is the end of it. Yeah, let's go into the beginning. So you can see how big her diastasis is. But what I want you to see during this one is how she begins to connect through her rib cage as she's doing this. Okay, so inhale, exhale, still let everything relax, and then connect. Sit bones, hip bones, bottom of the rib cage. Inhale, and you're going to see as she keeps doing this, you're going to see that she connects more and more as that the fascia starts to really tension. So you'll see that she starts to get right up towards her rib cage when she does this. So what you're seeing here is the tensioning. So she should get, sorry, I shouldn't put my fingers there. So you're going, because of this line, so you can see the oblique line getting more and more intense. That's because the fascia, the transverse compliance of the rectus sheath is starting to be activated again. Because you're loading her in this quadriceps. See how she now gets right up into that internal, external oblique? So she's beginning to connect a little bit more. Just because we switched the position and we're making her body work a little bit harder. So now you actually see all of that connection. So it's all of this fascia and the transverse compliance that is now beginning to tension again. Okay. All right, I'm going to come out of this. So that would constitute the program where you will learn all of these things. So I'm going to look again to see if there are any questions. Okay, so let me, so why do you do pelvic floor release in external rotation? I don't actually. I do it in any, you can sit with your knees together. I don't do it in any particular position. It's whatever you're comfortable doing. And sometimes you can just even be sitting in a chair. The pelvic floor exercise, the hip glides, are to work the pelvic floor in conjunction with hip rotators and all of the other muscles around the pelvic girdle. So it's not necessarily external rotation. Is there a person with classes in New Jersey? Yeah, we just actually had a course in New Jersey. I have faculty in New Jersey. We are going back more and more live. So you will see more and more classes going up as we come out of this pandemic, hopefully. So no other questions?
Hi, Carolyne. I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
Fascinating work. I'm curious to see if you
Who's
do
talking
any.
to me? Hold on.
Oh, it's Fran.
Talking? Hi, Fran. Okay, go ahead. I thought I recognized your voice.
I'm curious to see if you do any exhalations using different speech sounds or.
I have not, but after doing your course, I might play around with it. Yeah, I mean, I felt what you were doing when I came to your course. So I hadn't ever thought about it basically, but yeah. I just try not to overload the client too much right in the beginning with stuff, you know, because they're really concentrating on just trying to get this injury rehabilitated. But yeah, I'd look into that.
It's fascinating. Thank you so much. It's lovely work. Amazing.
I'm glad you showed up. Let me get back to this question. I'm embarrassed to not know how to get a man to activate his pelvic floor. Get him to sit on the ball. He'll soon figure out where that pelvic floor is. The thing of it is, so here's the thing, right? So why do we do bony cueing? We cue sit bones, hip bones, bottom of the rib cage, because it's easier for your client because they know where those bones are, instead of saying, well, we're going to bring, you know, the superficial transverse perineal muscle and ischiococcygeus and all that. Just say your sit bones, tailbone, pubic bone. And if you bring all those bones together, you've activated your pelvic floor. And it's the same for a man, right? They have the same bones. They just have a different, their pelvic floor is a little bit different than a woman. A woman's pelvic floor is wider and shallower, and the male pelvic floor is narrower, but they're still attached to the same bones. So you'll do the same cueing. You'll do all the same releases, everything. As I said, my first DR client was a guy. You mentioned, so coming, well, hello, my goodness, people from so long ago. You mentioned there is a typical DR posture earlier. What do you mean? So basically, when someone has no connection through their core, and that's what I said with the peripheral compensation. So basically, in order to support the body, they're going to be having to do something else. And the commonality through everybody with DR, I'm not saying that everybody with DR presents this way, but there's a common trait. And basically that is the gripping of the butt. So if you've got the gripping of the butt, you know they're gripping their pelvic floor as well. Okay, so there's going to be a hypertonic pelvic floor. They're going to tuck the pelvis under. And that could just be it. Or you get the person who takes it all up into their neck and shoulders, or you get the person who does both. Because there's no support through the core, they've got to take it somewhere else. Okay, so that's what we see with everybody. So just be aware of that. But the thing of it is, when you're doing the breathing and the relaxation alignment cueing in a supine position, you're getting them to feel where their body really should be. And then you change that in different positions. So they're, again, it's that interoceptive sapience, so they know where their body should be. Let me get to the next question. Why do some people get this and others don't? Who knows? There's a tipping point for everybody. What I have seen though, and since I've been doing this for so long, I saw a huge increase in DR when, right, I think around 96, 98 time. I wish I'd written stuff down, I didn't. But when we got all these gym franchises and when Pilates started becoming really popular is when I then started seeing diastasis. And I think, and again, it's not the exercise that's the villain, it's how you're doing the exercise. Okay, so if you're bracing and you're inhaling and holding and coming up into flexion over and over again, then there's a tipping point for the body, right? You could get it, your body, please, can you please mute yourself? It's very, very loud. There's a tipping point for everybody. So it could be on a day where you're not feeling so great, you haven't slept, you're very emotional. All of these play into it. And so it could be just that day where you do that one extra flexion of the torso. I'm going to say that because everybody thinks that's such a terrible exercise, but you could be just getting up off the sofa and your fascia could give just because it's just reached that point where it's the tipping point. Okay, so I don't know why people get it and some people do. And it's also, I just want to point out that not every hypermobile person gets a diastasis recti, because I've heard that as well. So, oh, you're hypermobile, you're going to have DR when you're pregnant. No, please don't put that fear into anybody. Okay. All right, any other questions? Okay, well, there are other questions. I know it's getting on. It's past 8 o'clock here in Chicago on a very balmy, my God, it was 70 degrees here today. It's November. I don't understand. Okay, so thank you, everybody. I know we've got loads of people, 491 people booked into this. Thank God you weren't all here on my TV screen, on my computer screen. Oh, yes. There is a code for those of you who haven't done my course. I have given you a 20% discount. There is a coupon code. I think, oh, here it is. Robin's sending it to us. It's DR20 webinar, but it's in the chat here. And when we send out the replay, we'll also put that coupon code in there for you. So pass it along to anybody, no matter who. Just let anybody come and do this. Again, just want to thank you all again from coming from far and wide. I can see you all there. And any questions, just email me, okay? I'm happy to answer anything. All right. Okay, guys. You're welcome, Siop. All right, I'm watching everybody go. Thanks, Fran and Bridget. Lovely to see you again.